Hi guys, I'm very critical of the media when it comes to Reform UK. They give them disproportionate airtime. Now, there is an advantage also to that because when you allow them to speak, they dig themselves into a hole. And this is the case with Richard Tice when he's talking about the minimum wage here. Have a listen to this.
You think the minimum wage is too high? It's not very high. It's sort of £10 will do if you're younger.
As Nigel said, there's a range of ways of looking at it. If it means that young people are priced out of work because the minimum wage for young people has been increased too far, you've got to be willing to look at it.
So it's about 10 quid an hour. You think that's too far? Too much?
But the direction of travel is further north in a declining.
Perhaps,
over the next couple of years, that's the Labour ambition. In a declining economy where private sector jobs are falling, we've got to be realistic about what's the right thing. So, what works?
Okay, so listen, I'm really interested in this. I'm sitting at home. I am 18 years old. I'm going to get the minimum wage in my first job. I really want to know what Richard Tice thinks I should be paid per hour.
Well, the great thing is to try and make sure that you're not taxed too much.
Give me an answer. Come on, Richard. You can give me an answer.
I'm not going to give you a per hour, per minute, because we're talking about in 3 years' time or 2 years' time when there's a general election.
But right now, you're saying £10 is too much.
What I'm going to say to any youngster is we will make work pay.
We will make work pay. We don't actually have any figures, we just have slogans. Okay, a slogan is not going to fry on the pan. A slogan is not going to pay the bills. Now, this whole discussion around minimum wage is a bit distorted because the focus is on young people, but it's not just young people who are on minimum wage. So this is something that needs to be corrected. And also, I would love for Richard Tice to be asked, would you work for minimum wage? You want other people to work for less than minimum wage. Would you work for minimum wage? Would you work for £10 an hour? Because if he says no, then why are you expecting others to? Well, because I'm a successful businessman and I don't need... No. You want other people to work for less than... He literally said he thinks it's too high. So he wants people to work for less than minimum wage. Now, there are countries in Europe, for example, Denmark, where there isn't a minimum wage. So then you're probably thinking, well, maybe people are being exploited there. That people are paid very little money and they're working for buttons. No, the opposite is happening. Wages are reasonably high because there are strong unions there. There is an ethos of collective bargaining. So it keeps wages higher. So there's no need for minimum wage. Now, do you think Richard Tice and Reform would support the idea of strengthening the unions? No, of course not. They're the opposite of that. They're the Tories, remember. Tories 2.0. So they want weaker unions and they don't want a minimum wage. Because if you don't want a minimum wage, then you should support strengthening unions. But they don't want either of those. They want a race to the bottom. They want people to beg their employer for more pay, not to be collectively bargaining for better pay. They don't want a minimum wage because they want to have a race to the bottom. This is not a party of the working class. I hope people will wake up and smell the coffee here. Reform UK are not a working class party. They're a bunch of toffs, private school guys who support tax cuts for the rich or a regime which benefits the rich because they're rich themselves. They're tapping into issues like immigration because they know that working class communities, working class people are concerned about immigration, and they're using it as a vehicle to their ultimate goal: get into power, cut taxes, reduce the size of the government, kick people off benefits, force people into jobs where there is no minimum wage, where they'll be forced to work for, a couple of quid an hour just to get by. And if they die, well, who gives a crap? If they're not able to pay their way, we don't care. Because that's not our goal. Our goal is to reduce the size of government, to cut taxes for our friends and donors and ourselves, and that's it. And in order to get into power, we need to convince people to vote against their own interests. They present themselves as the party of business as well, which is also a bit ironic because Nigel Farage and Richard Tice here supported Brexit, which made it more difficult for businesses to operate. It's just the rich. It's not even business. They're not pro-business. They're not pro-worker. They're just pro-rich. And if they get their way, they of course would eliminate the minimum wage and there would be a massive race to the bottom. Of course, it wouldn't be just the minimum wage. It would be other protections for workers. they want to get rid of them as well. They voted against measures that would protect workers. You can look at the vote in Parliament yourself. This is not a party on the side of the working class. They never were, and they never will be. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.